Welcome, everyone, to the first big, well, actually, it's the second big Retroblasting live stream of Iconicon, but this one is a big one. This is one of the ones I've been most excited for as a Gen X kid of the 80s, and I couldn't be more pleased that Matt Swaford of Reclaimers Vintage Toys and Endless Bullets podcast, Tom Berges of I Grew Up Star Wars, and the man himself, Bill Allen of Rad, are here to talk about Rad. And Bill, thank you so much for joining us on this. Thank you for taking the time. This is such an important movie for our generation and also a whole generation of extreme sports, aficionados, as extreme sports has never gone away, and more people keep finding this movie. So there's so much to talk about. Your book has come out, My Rad Career, which is a treasure trove for anybody who wants to know what the 80s Hollywood landscape was like in the 80s. This is the source. So Matt, Tom, please kick off the discussion.
Absolutely. I want to hear from Tom, our good buddy Tom Berges from I Grew Up Star Wars. Tom, how are you?
Good to be here. Good to be here with Bill. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, definitely. And Mr. Allen, of course, from the movie Rad, Crew Jones himself, as well as many other things. Bill, it is an absolute pleasure. Like Michael said, we are very honored that you're hanging out with us.
Thanks, Matt. It's a lovely day, and I'm happy to sit here and reminisce and talk about the past and the future. But I thought about something, and let me run this by you. I've listened to a couple of these podcasts I've done recently, and apparently I stick in a few too many you-knows. Right? So I'm thinking, and let me know if this is kosher, I brought a beer, and it's unopened, but maybe every time you hear me say, I have to take it.
You know what?
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
See, you should have a beer too, because you just said it first. But I guarantee you I'm a lightweight, and I cannot really handle this size of a beer. So if I do get to the bottom of it, there won't be a lot of interviewing going on, but a lot of inappropriate laughter. So if you're okay with it, I think it could be fun.
I'm down for that drinking game.
You're going to start sounding like Duke Best.
That's right, if I'm lucky. And, well, let's just get this party started.
Yeah. This is how we get down for Iconicon.
Before we get started, we have a very kind comment from your Muslim uncle. He says, as a late fan that found this 80s gem in his late 30s, thanks, American Dad. Just wanted to show some love and ask, with extreme sports, could we see an update movie in the vein of Maverick?
Anything is possible in the Rad universe. There's been a lot of talk through the years, and nothing I can talk about right now, but there's hope springs eternal. And the reason I'm talking to you guys right now is because of the fans. And you guys represent the fan base in a lot of ways, and the age and the culture. And so the conversation still continues. The live events still continue. We've got some cool stuff planned for the fans. So just keep tuned.
Yeah,
right.
You do a lot of personal appearances. I saw you just went to Bentonville, Arkansas.
That's right. In Bentonville, they have the most fantastic bicycle culture because the Walmart family is so into the biking scene. They put $65 million worth of bike trails in and around Bentonville. So they held a bike fest out there, and I was out there for about 3 or 4 days, and I plan to go back. It's fantastic. If you've never
That's
been.
Awesome. Yeah, that's rad.
Well, let's Tom, when did you okay, I got to show some pictures of Tom real quick. This is amazing. So Tom, just to set the scene for everybody, Tom was a BMX serious like enthusiast in the 80s when Rad came out. And so just as an example, this is, I think, one of the coolest photos of you, Tom, from back then. Like, I mean, you're doing the real stuff here. Look at that. Yeah. Tom, when did you see Rad for the first time, and what were your initial memories of it? If you're okay sharing those in front of Bill Allen.
Oh, I caught it on VCR probably the year after it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was 86, 87. That was really the start of not BMX culture exactly, but freestyle culture,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of guys would, you'd jump on your bike. You didn't need a track. All you needed was a flat level surface. And, you could do bike tricks and jumps and that kind of thing. Ramps was a little bit of a different deal, but 87 in the summertime, when you were out of school, and then after school, we would pop in the cassette, and that would just get us started. So we would watch, Bill, we'd watch you pretty much. I've watched you at least 200 times in the show. So, yeah. So thank you.
That's a lot of these fans claim to have seen it thousands of times. It's just constantly going like wallpaper. So, I'm impressed that you saw it 200 times. But at the same time, only 200 times.
Well, I didn't exactly count how many, but
now,
yeah.
Matt, you got your first question.
I was gonna say, what was it like? I mean, having this is basically the movie that you're most well known for, and it's a bicycle movie. And right off the bat, reading the book, you weren't allowed to ride bicycles as a child because of an accident that your brother was almost in.
That's correct.
And what was it like when you got cast for this movie? Was it, like a veil being lifted where it's like, I can finally ride a bike?
I was allowed to ride a bike once I turned 18. I had just discovered Lincoln Continentals and chicks by that point. So I knew how to ride a bike. I just didn't own one as a kid. So that's the difference. I rode them, but certainly was not into the whole bike culture scene because I didn't own one. Once I got cast, I was a working actor at the time, and it was an exciting thing, but it was not out of the realm of possibility that I ended up on a movie set playing this type of guy. I'd played a lot of athletes, or several at that point.
Well, yeah, one of the things also at the beginning of the book is you were in a film called And Off about jockeys and horse racing.
Right. Yeah.
And did that film ever get finished?
It did not. Thank goodness. And the producer ended up going to jail because he embezzled the funds for the movie out of his own bank. And it was just ridiculous.
Oh.
Just ridiculous. So it got me my SAG card, got me some money in the bank, got me out to California with an agent. So I'm very grateful. And I'm very grateful it never saw the light of day. It was just awful. It was this egomaniac filmmaker's first job. And it was not meant to be in that way, but it did create a lot of lasting relationships and got me and a young George Clooney out here right at the same time. So it had its effects without ever coming out.
Yeah.
You talk about, finally got to ride a bike when you were 18 and you were already a working actor. You then find yourself in a production being directed by Hal Needham, who is, if you want to film some kind of vehicle and a person doing stuff in a vehicle, you couldn't find any better than Hal Needham. Probably even to this day, you can't find anyone better than Hal Needham. And,
or to do stunts in general.
Or to do stunts. And that's what my next question was, because the stuntmen always say it's not the big stunts you worry about all the time. It's usually the small stunts that get you in trouble because you get lulled into a false sense of security. And then the next thing you know, some little stunt is what hurts you. But sometimes the little stuff is what they need your close-ups for when you're the actor, the main protagonist in the movie. So, like, for example, I was watching the film again, and this little moment here, I just kind of picked out. Or this one right here. These are the smaller things in the movie proportionate to other things that happen on these BMXs. I mean, you had to get those close-ups and stuff what was it like working with the stunt people to figure out what proportion they were going to let you do? And then how careful did you have to be? Because the little things are what get you hurt.
Right. Showing that dump truck clip, that's probably the only stunt where I was in any sort of physical danger, in harm's way in any way. And we had to rely on the city dump guy to not throw me in the back of his truck. So it just there's calculated risks, and Hal's job, not only as a director but as a stunt double himself, was to not hurt the actors. He really understood the importance of that, and so he was not going to let me get hurt. The stuff on the logs, I mean, I was nowhere near the edge, and I was on plywood, so I was very stable up there. And the stunt doubles, they number in about a half a dozen, I think, at least, that they used for me. So he had me covered 9 ways from Sunday. There was no CGI. So when you see me on a bike, it's me on a bike. But I'm pretty embarrassingly bad at that point in my riding career, and it shows. But I still get to this day people coming up asking me if I did my own stunts, which of course I take full credit for. But I'm shocked that the illusion that we went for, by and large, kind of worked. I mean, Eddie Fiola looked a lot like me physically, and so the camera could get pretty close, and you're still not sure what you're looking at. But part of the fun of picking the movie apart is seeing what stunt double was doubling what actor at what point. Because
right,
the wig budget for that movie is pretty extensive.
It's pretty close in most of the shots. In most of the shots, if you're just watching to enjoy, you really can't tell the transition. You're right. The guy does look a lot like you.
Well, the wig budget for Lori Loughlin's stunt double was astronomical, I'm sure.
Big, but apparently not big enough, because you can see Lori's hair is pretty straight, and yeah, there's some behind the back shots where all of a sudden she's got like these Mary Pickford curls. That happened. But it's
Tom,
I think anytime you're seeing Bill from the back, it's someone else on a bike.
Good chance. Yeah.
Sorry, back to you.
No, go ahead. How, speaking of Lori and some of your scenes together, how uncomfortable was the ass sliding scene into that freezing water?
Oh, this scene?
And it's probably crazy, but crazy is nothing new. No.
Every time I watch that, I think that's one of those moments where the actors are told, this is going to be horrible, but you've got to make it look like it's really fun. Are we off base?
100%. I haven't seen my gonad since that day. It was very water was very cold, and Martin likes to tell the story. Hal asked Martin Aparicio to go down the chute first, just to test it, and he said, "Oh, by the way, come up out of the water smiling and laughing when you hit it, because we don't want to scare the actors." And he did. Listen, I'm not an idiot. That water was cold, and I'm looking at the frozen snow that's melting into the drain. It's just like, I knew it was going to be bad, and it was. It's freezing cold. But I guess the question that nobody asked is, why is crew taking Lori to an open sewer on their first date? Jumping in there. That's kind of weird at face value. Not to mention the name of it. And it's just it's all around kind of an odd choice for a movie, but it's one of those things that really sticks out for audiences.
Well, and it had to be cold because you guys were shooting Canada for California, right?
That's right. In October, it was plenty cold.
Alberta rivers ain't no joke, I'll tell you.
Yep, it was definitely a weird flex for crew to be like, "Hey, let's go ass sliding in a sewer pipe into a frozen river."
Well, actually, I know how they came up with it. In the original script, it was supposed to be some sort of a natural waterfall or natural slide, and of course, they couldn't find anything like that because I've never seen anything like that. So they actually had to build it, And so that's what it ended up looking like.
Despite the stellar acting in there of looking like that was fun, when everybody in their right mind knows that can't be fun at all, there are moments in the film, the majority of the film, where I get the sense that, and you keep me honest, Bill, but I get the sense that the movie was a lot of fun to shoot, because you seem to have, not you personally, but all of you in the cast seem to have a really good rapport and a really good patter together. So, like, for example, this moment here.
You over-rotated.
No shit.
I mean, obviously, you were already an experienced actor, so you can sell that. But it feels like on the set, the energy was good. Could I be wrong?
Great, and that cut in particular kind of shows Hal's greatness. In other words, that was a mistake. Jose Yanez did loop out. He was trying to nail that backflip, and he landed hard. And Hal, the filmmaker in him, went, "We're keeping that. Now we're going to cut Bill in landing and make a bit out of it." Much like when my character goes down in the qualifying races. Eddie Fiola falls off his bike. He hit a root that was covered by leaves. He went down and took a pedal to the head and got a concussion. He was out for seconds, if not a minute or so. And so Hal cut that into the movie, into the qualifying races. So that's what made him great. Or one of the things that made him great as an action director is he was able to incorporate these quote accidents into the edit and make it part of the narrative.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's somebody with instincts right there. That's also somebody who's done a lot of movies with Burt Reynolds where there's going to be improv.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, he was the highest paid and hardest working stuntman in Hollywood for a couple decades. So he was doing 2 or 3 TV or movie shows a day. And plus he founded Stunts Unlimited. So he knew the medium. He knew what was exciting to audience. He knew what sold. So by the time he got to direct his first movie, he was so experienced in knowing what works for audiences. So he's very much kind of a populist popcorn movie director. But I heard recently that Smokey and the Bandit outperformed Close Encounters that year, that was released at the same year. So, he just understood what got people on the edge of their seat, and he brought that expertise to Rad.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, guy broke every bone in his body at least once over,
Man.
And one of the things I read in the book too was, and it was a movie that I'm familiar with, called Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman, where he does the scene where he jumps from horse to horse, and you mentioned that. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, oh my God, somebody else appreciates that.
Well, and that was the easy part of his day. The hard part of his day was putting down his favorite horse that morning when it broke a leg before they could get a vet out there.
Yep.
So he had to do that as his favorite show pony. It's like his best friend. He had to put that horse down by his own hand and then film maybe the most difficult stunt I've ever seen in movies. I can't imagine anything more difficult. And the director, Arthur Penn, said, do it with a smile on your face. So you see that footage. He's got a big old grin on his face. It's just, I don't understand that kind of bravery for a film. I've lost. Hey, I said, guys, you got
to drink. Yeah. Sorry, we've been snoozing on that one.
Yeah. So
we all drink.
Please. I've lost friends or a friend certainly on a film set, and seen people get injured, and that's what you don't want to have happen. And yet that's the risk. And for somebody like a Hal Needham or these stunt guys, that's what they do for a living. And going to the hospital is part of their job description, basically. So that kind of commitment, it's hard to understand. It's really hard to understand.
Well, you formed from another thing that I got from the book, was that you formed a really good relationship with Hal, it seemed like, and you guys kept up over the years.
We became more friendly after, I guess, the 25th anniversary in Canada. We reconnected, and he had retired at that point. and we were able to spend some really nice time together. And then we did some more screenings, and it was after I had read his autobiography, so I was able to grill him on some of the things that he couldn't put in the book that I needed to know about. So I was able to, reconnect with him towards the end of his life. And what's the name of that show? The Lion in Winter.
Yes.
To watch just a monument, a national monument of a human being, in his declining days and months, was very heart rending, and I'll always cherish those times. And I owe a lot.
Yep.
To Hal. I owe a lot to Hal. I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if it weren't for Hal.
Yep.
Tom, tell us a little bit about, and Bill, feel free to throw in as well with your very robust experiences in this regard. But Tom, this movie for BMXers at the time, with its mix of freestyle BMX and rally race BMX, what did it mean to you guys? And to finally have your burgeoning sport put on screen with a major director backed by a major production company?
Gave it a lot of legitimacy. I mean, when you're in high school, when you've got your bike and your friends, it's awesome. And like I said, we would watch it before we, went out and rode. So it was exciting. I think a lot of folks knew about RAD, especially in my town. It wasn't much different than, the town depicted in the movie. So there was a lot of weird uphill battles with, trying to get skateboard parks and tracks and stuff built in town. That really never came to fruition when I was riding, but a couple of years later, that actually became a reality for a lot of the younger folks that were riding.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, just watching the movie was a huge motivator as far as riding and trying stuff. 360s and that kind of thing on ramps and stuff was definitely kind of motivated by watching Bill's character.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was kind of a fun little deal. I did have a question for Bill, going back to Hal. I know you got the chance to kind of reconnect with Hal, but I wanted to know if you knew or do you still stay in contact with any of the actors? I mean, I know Art, Martin and Eddie quite a bit, but do you still have any contact with any of the folks that you actually work with, acting wise on the show?
Yeah, not super recently. I have seen Bart Connor in the recent past. We're still buddies. Jamie Clark played Luke. He's a friend of mine. Yeah, he's still up in Canada, but we still keep in contact. And that's probably it for the cast. I'm still very friendly with the writer, producer Sam Bernard. I just left him a message an hour ago. I hope he calls me back. Yeah, I'm still friends with the creative team in a lot of ways, and some of the stunt riders. I got to hang with Travis Chipris last weekend, and I wrote Lori some letters in Lompoc. I never heard back. I'm kidding.
Speaking of the cast, Bill, this is a great way to work this image in there. I know we all lived through the 80s in various ages, but in 1985, I guess when you would be filming this for 86, even though it was the 80s, did any of you on the cast have pause when these two actors were costumed this way? I'm just curious, and again, they stand out because those outfits are from V. They're literally from
exactly.
the V. Yeah. So I was wondering if everybody in the cast, when they came walking out onto the gym set, were kind of like, "Oh, that's a bold choice." Like,
well, it was not so out of character for the costumer, and you're going to recognize this guy immediately when I tell you who it is. Remember the guy in the Coke onesie? He's like,
yes.
Oh, that guy obviously rides for Coke. Well, that was Jerry, the costumer, and nobody would get into that Coke outfit. No, not one writer was going to get on screen, even though it meant more screen time. So they put Jerry in that.
Oh, that's funny.
Jerry obviously rides for Coke.
Well, this was his kind of, style already. So for him to come up with those, it was comical. And I think it was Hal's wife at the time, Danny, who gave him the final, yeah, we got to have those guys in this outfit. I think the costumer put them in those outfits and paraded them by Hal and his wife, and Danny got all hot and bothered by it and liked it.
Well, they were pretty ostentatious outfits, but those are, I mean, that's the same costumer that put sequins on your pants during the dance scene too, right?
Thanks for pointing that out. And this is a little talked about aspect of that movie, in that why, when the lights come on, does Crew have sequins on his pants and his shirt?
Because Crew kind of dressed very muted. I mean, he wore like,
didn't get out and bedazzle his outfit while the lights were off, and then rip them off as soon as they came back on. So this, to me, is a fantasy sequence,
right.
Not unlike Judge Reinhold watching Phoebe Cates come out of the water in Fast Times.
Yeah, that's
it's a good thing you didn't have a response like that with the Fast Times scene.
Well, I think Crew might have been in the men's room taking care of business while he's thinking about the
It is. I always felt that it was definitely a heightened reality scene where, yes, they were showing off with their stunts, but they stylized it for the purposes of the storytelling. And I have a brief clip of it right here. And in typical Hal Needham fashion, he makes sure that the cutaways back and forth are pretty much for 1986 seamless between you guys and the stunt performers. So and also the great music that was behind it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Send me an angel.
Questions: where's Luke and Becky? Where are they? And why are
there
a bunch of creepy bicycle executives at a high school dance? I understand it's.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
It was confusing. I always thought as a kid, I'm like, why is everybody in town at this dance? And is this what dances are like? Because I went to my first dance in fifth grade.
And ostensibly, there's a banner in the back that says, something about Helltrack, welcome Helltrack. So it's not necessarily like a prom, but why would they hold? I don't know. It just makes little sense. And then you got creepy old Duke Best spiking the punch, and
Yeah.
a lot of stuff you couldn't get away with today, including the opening shot of the movie where that guy pinches the gal's butt. They wouldn't let you do that.
They had to be real close, because an hour after that they were going to do bingo in the same high school auditorium. So.
Right?
TJC, thank you for the super chat. He says, one of the greatest things about Rad is how it captures the childhood of an 80s kid perfectly. And I would do want to dovetail off that to something that we were talking before the stream started about the longevity this movie has had. That even when this movie was, like so many other loved films of the past, kind of forgotten about during the DVD era by the DVD houses and by the studios, the audience never forgot about it and kept demanding, where is this movie? To the point that Rad ended up beating franchises like Indiana Jones and The Godfather to 4K disc. But I want to show us a brief sequence here between you and Talia Shire, which was, I think, a major theme in 80s films at the time. And I think it's one of the reasons, I could be too heady here, but I think it's one of the reasons this film is still relevant and still loved and finding audiences.
I know, Mom, but
But what? You always wanted to go to college. That's been the plan.
this is a very important race. Would you look at the stakes here? Besides, I really think I can get this one. I think I've got a chance.
You have a chance with an education.
And I find this very interesting, Bill, because there were a number of movies that had that theme, in it in the 80s with teen culture, and also just the idea that your parents want you to just join the establishment, just work for the man. And the story always revolves around guys like Crew, who are these people who want to work for themselves. They want to create something for themselves. They want to follow their own path. And now, as we live through, not to get too socio-political, we're living through the Great Resignation, as people are finally figuring out what the 80s movies were trying to tell them for the last 40 years, which is put more of your investment into yourself. Don't put it into the man. And I just wonder what you attribute to Rad's longevity with audiences, to the point that it beats Indiana Jones to the format. What have you heard from other fans? What do you attribute this film's legs to?
Well, again, I know Sam Bernard very well, and he's said in interviews, the guy who wrote the movie along with Jeffrey Edwards, that he was taking a lot of cues from Joseph Campbell, who's a hero of mine. If you're not familiar with Joseph Campbell, he's a sociologist and an expert in mythologies, and The Hero with a Thousand Faces was one of his books. And so Sam was taking heavily from his philosophy, which is buy the ticket, take the ride, follow your passion. That's it. A very simple message, and it gets lost in the sauce. And society that Talia represents in the movie puts these things on us as we grow older, and a lot of us just take it on. Oh, this is what you want for me, so it must be the thing that I need to do, when they've sort of stopped listening to their inner being, which Crew points out later on. When your gut talks, you listen. And a lot of people have lost the ability to do that, or don't think it's really accurate or necessary. And I try to surround myself with people that's all they listen to, is their inner being, and will take no other judgment or no other counsel. Maybe get some expert advice, but at the end of the day, they got to go, does this sit right with me? The real ballers that I've known through the decades, who you read about in the book, these are people who don't compromise their joy. They find they've got a limited time on this planet, and they're going to fill it up with their passion as much as they can. And do a lot of that. If you're willing to sleep under a bridge, you can do it all day, every day. And those people who are willing to do it and are good at what they do, well, they end up with the mansion in Malibu. Often they don't have to sleep under a bridge for long, because they find their way. Now, there's no guarantee there, and if you ring that bell, well, then you could be the next Will Smith or Johnny Depp or Armie Hammer. There's no guarantee, or Brandon Lee. There's no guarantee that doing what you do is going to be the thing that's going to give you the most longevity in life, right? Is that what it's about? Living as long as you can, being in an old folks' home at 120. That doesn't interest me. I don't want to. Right now, as I sit, turning 60 this year, I don't want to live past mobility. I just don't. I may change, once I get crippled. But so that gives you a zest for life, and these guys that are portrayed in the movie are just those characters who are going for what they want for the time they have it, and a lot of them don't see past their 30s or 40s as far as what am I going to do once I reach an age where I can no longer compete, and so that brings a whole nother set of challenges, but there is a second and third chapter for a lot of these guys, and there is an ability to give back if that's what you're into, and continue the sport and grow the sport. That's what I find is the guys who are passionate about it, like anything, want to spread their passion and see future generations get involved. So that's kind of the stage I'm at, and the people I'm hanging out with now.
You also said back there a few sentences, just letting you know.
Yeah, you got a drink.
And by the way, Tom, I counted 5 on your list.
I say way too much, Bill. That's my damn problem.
Start drinking, buddy.
That movie 611 says, was Bill a Rocky fan? And if so, how was it doing a sports movie with Talia Shire?
Great question.
I think everybody's a Rocky fan who ever saw that movie. It's undeniably a great movie. I was more a Godfather fan and certainly a film buff like you guys, serious film buff as a kid. And so 3 of the movies that got Best Picture, she started 3 movies that got Best Picture, in other words. And so it was mightily intimidating. Forget the fact that she's a Coppola. She's Francis's sister. You know, I was nervous, and it worked for the dynamic of our character. There was kind of a barrier there that I didn't have to play up. I was naturally intimidated by this gal, and she treated me perfectly kindly. Talia was very nice to me. But yeah, that name and her legacy and her resume carried a lot of weight with me, and it certainly was one of those times where you kind of had to pinch yourself and then go, okay, this is what's happening. You can't buckle. This is what you're there for. And great scene partners make you better. And so that was a joy. Is Hal really knew how to cast a movie and get really good players in front of the camera. And that's what sells a movie. Otherwise, it would have just been BMX videos.
Yeah.
Speaking of Talia and working with her, what was it like working with some of the other veteran actors like Jack Weston and Ray Walston, Alfie Wise?
Amazing. I mean, Alfie I wasn't familiar with, but Jack and Ray, I'm a child of the 60s. I grew up on Twilight Zone, and certainly my favorite Martian was in the mix. So now I'm playing opposite these guys who raised me. You know, I was a latch kid too. I watched television 8 hours a day, and now you're working with these people. It just it had a very kind of surreal quality about it, because you can't plan that sort of thing. You hope it happens. Okay, I'm moving to Los Angeles. I hope I'm not on a street corner for the rest of my life. I hope I get to work in movies, and then you do, and it becomes a bit overwhelming because you know these people. It's not like getting into computer programming where people at the top are more anonymous. These were the people that you grew up watching. So it's a weird business in that way. And then you become part of that quote establishment where I'm talking to you guys who are fascinated. Well, what's it like to be Bill Allen? Hell if I know. I was just at the right place at the right time, and I took a few acting classes and had some really good mentors. And I lost a few friends and family members while I was young, and that spurred me on to just be happy, because life is important. I ain't taking those SATs. I never did. I took a GED when I was 24 to prove myself I was smarter than your average high schooler, which well, I never had to pull it out for anybody.
Another thing that I saw in your book too that I was just floored by was you mentioned how Bart Connors, who plays Bart Taylor in the movie, he was one of the big gold medalists in 1984 as a gymnast. And I knew that as a kid because I watched the 84 Olympics. So when I watched the movie, I was like, oh, well, they must have hired him because he's such a good gymnast and acrobat and everything else. So that's why he was good at riding a bike in my kid brain. But reading your book, and you talk about how he had a lot of back issues and back pain and
knee
and injuries. Oh, was it knee? Oh, okay. I thought it was back, but yeah. And how he could, it was hard for him to get around and do a lot of things. And I found that fascinating. Was there any other, I guess not so much from the actors, but from some of the stunt riders where like they had a lot of injuries and were still doing that and kind of soldiering through? Or
well, the ones who were too injured didn't show up to the set. In other words, I talked to Woody Itzen a few years ago, and he was invited to be a part of it, but he had just blown his ankle out. And if you're riding like that, you're always dealing with injury. You're always dealing with chronic pain. So I don't know of anybody else in that kind of position. Bart, of course, had destroyed his knee, and like myself, he was hired as an actor. They didn't need him to do stunt double or do riding or any sort of stunts. So that's how big of a deal Bart was. If you're wondering why did he get that job, because those guys were rock stars in 1984. I was here.
Oh, yeah.
It was a big deal, and Team USA, man, they were everywhere. So him and was it Kurt Thomas?
Kurt Thomas, yeah.
Yeah, he got Jim Cotta out of it. Hollywood about I don't know what the plot was. I just remember the promos, and he'd be being chased by bad guys, and then they'd do a LL bar across an alley, and he would grab him and then swing, and the bad guys would run into his feet. I mean,
yeah. I think Bart made the better choice in movies because Jim Cotta is.
Yeah, he did what he was offered to do, and we were all psyched to be there. And Hal was not a bicyclist. Bart was not a bicyclist. I was not a bicyclist. Everybody had to rely on these, what were, basically kids, to set the tone, let us know what they couldn't do, figure out how we could most effectively double them. But it was a new experience in Hal's playbook also, because he was a car and horse guy and barroom brawl guy. He was not a bicycle guy, so it was new territory, and that's part of the reason it's made that impact, is because it was such new territory, and Helltrack and the first backflip, seeing cherry pickers for the first time. Tom, a lot of these tricks you would see in magazines, but you didn't know if they could actually, one, pull them off, or how they got into the tricks or out of them. So it was a tutorial that way.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
But,
Tom, I see your wheels turning. Did you have a question?
Oh no, I was just wondering. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, so I'm gonna save my question until the end.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah.
All right. Well, the last question that I have, as far as the movie Rad is concerned, I'm going to be bringing up a scene, Bill, but it's not in the way that I've heard a lot of people talk about this scene, because I never saw it that way. And when I heard some people say it, so during the qualifying event for Helltrack, there is a moment where a large part of the audience has said crew cheated. I've always seen it as paying off the scenes that establish that crew is a rider of experience through his paper route and other things, that knows how to ride successfully, and he's got no fear on any surface, and so he knows how to improvise. And so then when you're in the qualifying race, he's the kid that's always thinking outside the box, not to use a tired phrase, and he's able to navigate any terrain to stay up on two wheels. Do you remember what the writer's intention was behind that corner cut? Because I defer to you.
Man, I was not part of the planning of that sequence, obviously, and a lot of it came down to editing choices. They could have shown that, they could have not shown that. So that's an editing decision, and I mean, yeah, I don't think he stayed within the boundaries of the race. I think they could have taken points off. Man, I don't know how those races work. I mean, Helltrack, the qualifying races, those were all kind of one-off things anyway. I don't know if they correlate. Tom, you would know more than I, to anything in the real world, right? They were just kind of, the movie was in its own universe in that way.
Right.
In my opinion, crew cheated. Sorry, Bill, but I mean, when you've got a racetrack, it's a predetermined track, right? When you get out of that track and you cut a corner, that's.
I just thought, much like the gym sequence, it was paying off the characters, what the character we'd seen him do and his abilities. And
Trust
so it was
me,
like,
I'm in so many rad Facebook groups, and that is one of the biggest. You probably know, Bill. That's probably one of the biggest debates going on in every group.
well, I have, for those of you, I see people in the chat saying they've not seen the film, but they're so excited to watch it now, and they're saying because hearing what Bill has to say and all of the clips that are being shown. And I do have a clip here of the visuals. I had to put other audio over it so that we wouldn't get copyright struck from the song being played. But here it goes.
We're here for the biggest and most important bicycle motocross event ever held, Helltrack.
He's going for it all.
So, audience, I leave it to you.
See, I want to defend this a little bit because they decided last minute in the movie to have that qualifying race. Just to kind of as a dog and pony show to say if anybody local can qualify. So I feel like they threw that race together kind of hastily, and they probably didn't have parameters and hard rules set up. And crew was smart enough that I think he exploited that using his BMX parkour.
Matt, the interesting thing about that is, and looking at it now, it just seems like he's actually going out of his way to add more time than actually sticking with the track and going with the flow, because he's kind of going way out and then back in. It just seems it's counterintuitive, but hey, that's the magic of editing, right?
Either way, I don't want to lose Bill, so I just wanted to ask if that was something that was a character motivator in the script. So we'll ride right past that now. And
Bill, if I can ask you a real quick question, because I think we're going to be changing gears. What was your favorite scene, movie-wise, watching the movie?
Watching the movie is the qualifying races. Gives me goosebumps every time. Filming the movie was making out with Lori Loughlin.
How many takes did you have to do?
Multiple takes. And
good man.
That's pretty much all I remember from the movie, was doing those scenes. I hear there was bicycles involved, not quite sure, but that's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about the end of that qualifying race when he's just, pedaling his ass off. And I'm assuming that wasn't you. I think that was a stunt rider. Correct me if I'm wrong, just how he's just throwing so much effort into it. I remember watching that as a kid and being like, that's how hard I have to go if I ever want to win a race or win anything.
Right. Yeah. And that was one of the things that was staged, but the action was real. Those riders were going for it. It's like, okay, this is when we need you and the crew to pull out front. And actually the bigger riders, because Ed's got short legs, they're holding back a bit. But Martin talks about it. He was in that group, and they wanted to. They were racing. Most of them were racers anyway, by trade or by avocation, and so they were into it. And
most racing back then was on a groomed track. I mean, that looked bloody treacherous.
It was, and Ed shows how treacherous when he gets that concussion.
Absolutely.
But again, that's what's exciting about the movie is the trial and Helltrack. These things were all came out of Hal's brain and made the movie. The movie wouldn't be nearly as exciting if we hadn't had a Helltrack or these qualifying races.
The last thing I want to cover before we move on from Rad is, and again, you talk about it in the book, but and I've heard about it in other places. I think Martin and Eddie, I've read interviews with them where they talk about that drop at the beginning of Helltrack,
right,
and just how steep that was. Do you want to expound on?
Well, and it combines nicely with this super chat we've gotten from TJC. Thank you for the super chat. He says, question for Bill, did you personally ride Helltrack? I guess he means either when cameras weren't rolling or just in general. And if so, how hard going was it?
Yeah.
Oh, hell no. It was really for professionals only. And when the riders, the day of, first saw that wall, nobody was going to go down it. Nobody. One rider left. He packed his van and went back to the States. So it's pretty famous story that Beetle Rosecrans, who was only about 14 at the time, put a ladder on one side of Helltrack and just would go halfway up the ladder and drop in until he figured out how to do it from the top. And the other guys were standing around looking at each other going, well, if the kid did it, now we have to do it. But that being said, it's very sketchy. We recreated it in Texas about 4 years ago. The entire track, soup to nuts. They kicked the wall out a little bit to make it slightly less hazardous, maybe 5 degrees. But by the time you're at the bottom of that wall, you've got no traction on your back tire. You're all on your front tire. And if you're not on it, you're going to wash out hard. And
Yeah.
that's a 20, 25-foot drop. I was nowhere near, never will be, the skill set to drop down that thing.
Yeah.
We have two quick questions. Kenny Whitty says, was there anything cut from the film that you would have wanted in it?
More makeout scenes with Lori. I mean, people what they want. Unfortunately, I don't think there are any more. No, pretty much. We shot everything in the script and not much more. He just knew what he wanted, and we came in on time, under budget, and that's a rarity in itself. But you can tell watching the movie, he doesn't do an abundance of close-ups. There's a lot of master shots, and he was just he was from TV, and he was about getting the shot and moving on. And there's good things about that kind of filmmaking. It keeps the spontaneity high, but also some things can be glossed over. But the only scene that was cut that doesn't really make any helps the film kind of lose a narrative is Crew is riding a Blue Max in Helltrack, which is the Blue Max at the 7-Eleven, right? And there was a scene filmed where the guy from 7-Eleven, the proprietor, gives me that bike at Helltrack. You can see it on YouTube. It's horrible. It's the worst acting I've ever done. And thank God they cut it, because you look at it and I don't know that the camera's on, or I think it's a rehearsal. I don't know what was going through my mind, but I was not up to performance level. But that's one of the missing links in that movie is the 7-Eleven guy giving me the Blue Max at Helltrack, and my natural reaction as the character would be, oh, that's really cool, thanks, because Crew's mind, that's a really desirable bike. Whether it was or not, who knows. But yeah, it didn't play well, and they cut that, thank goodness.
And then Born to Be Rad asks, did those replica bikes ever come out, and if not, will they?
Bikes come out. So Mongoose did a repop of the Californian maybe 1 or 2 years ago. I've got a signature bike. I'm doing some bike frames that look similar to the Crew bike with Bill Homan out of Riverside Bassett Bikes. So if you go to my website, if you're interested, yeah, I've got some signature frames of my own. They're super legit. They're great cruisers. And I just thought it was kind of important to be associated with a bike company.
Sure. Absolutely. All right, sir. We are now at the point where you want to go beyond the movie Rad and into, I believe, Bill's book.
Yes, which we've already kind of skimmed into and out of.
Right.
But, was really, really impressed when I got your book, Bill. What prompted you? I mean, obviously, other than to write a book, what got you to the point where you were like, you know what, I need to write some of these stories down and really get it out there? Like, what was the motivation behind that?
Well, I guess a very pushy wife saying you got to do something, Bill. And she'd been pushing me a long time to do a book. And it's not an easy task. Even it's not a very long book. It's not War and Peace, but I packed a lot in there. And of course, most people who know me from Rad. So I stated in the book that I didn't have enough material for a whole book about Rad. I just don't. My memory's kind of fading. So I wanted to put in some of my Hollywood stories, some of my history, and try to make it more of a narrative. I've lived a pretty interesting life out here. I've had a really interesting ride, but you wouldn't know it unless you knew me or I sat down and told you my life story. But even writing it, I'm like, oh, that was pretty cool. I did that. And that was pretty cool. So I took basically my 30 or 40 best stories and put them in sequential order, and it makes some sort of sense. And I put it out about 8 years ago, and about 5 years ago, a New York publishing house approached me to come and put it out in hardback and on Audible. And so it became an Amazon bestseller, much to my delight and surprise, and people continue to talk about it and love it. I think it captures not only my story, but as you know, the whole scene in Hollywood in the 80s, or the part that I was taking place in or part of. And so it kind of paints that picture. It's fun.
Yeah, it really it blew me away because I expected it just to be a book about, yeah, we made Rad and then we ate chicken one day and then we did this. But
Yeah.
as I got into it, I was like, oh my gosh, like it's such a good glimpse at what it was like to be a young actor in Hollywood at that time. And some of the experiences you had with people like George Clooney and Miguel Ferrer and, even the Nick Nolte story and Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt and Michael J. Fox. And just, there's so many like stories about it, and just page after page, it's so interesting that I was just like, wow. And of course your friendships with Lou Diamond Phillips and Brandon Lee, I had no idea about. And you have some really, really good stories in there about them.
Thanks.
Was
the
was
guys.
that?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what was that? Was that kind of was it hard getting that personal in the book with some of the stories that you have?
It was, and when I've reread it in the past, I've been surprised a little bit that I decided to reveal some of these things. But I wanted to give people, bang for their buck, so to speak, and kind of a good ride. So I'm happy that people enjoyed it. I tried to be as candid as possible. Of course, I couldn't tell everything that I wanted to, but I think it got the point across, and I really appreciate your paying attention to it. And it was not only a very important time in my life, but kind of an important time in the entertainment industry as far as our perspective and where we are now. I was hanging out with a lot of groundbreakers and people who had been established and people who were on the make, so to speak.
Well, you say you appreciate Matt paying attention to your book, Bill. We got people asking, drop his website link in the chat. Can't wait to read this. Bill, I am so buying your book today. Can I get an autograph from you?
I can confirm that you will.
Just purchase the book. Rad at the links being posted to your website just now. And we also have a starred comment here from WXS. He says, Seth here. Bill, speak on your signature bike. It's killer.
Thank you. I worked hard on it. And again, it's out of Riverside. Bill Homan, who runs Bassett Bikes, who also owns Pedal Power that's represented at Rad, got together and we made a tribute bike. It's a lot like the Californian, only we're doing it in 3 different sizes, 24, 26, and 29-inch frames. It's chrome moly chrome, and they're really, really nice cruisers. I guess SE has really made a big splash with their big bikes, and a lot of these things have kind of taken over. So I threw my hat into the ring. I'm super proud of it. It's not inexpensive. It's American made and the highest quality welding I've ever seen. So it's not for the faint of heart if you don't have a lot of money in your bank account, but for the ones who do, they love it, and I'm so proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful bike.
Well, I mean, that is something. I'm not trying to go back to the movie itself, but to your present day life as an author and as somebody who's clearly enthusiastic about cycling and BMX cycling especially. Did this movie give you the bug, or did you already have the bug kind of, and then you were excited to do this film? Because you are now very much respected in this scene.
What gave me the bug really was rediscovering the fan base and being invited to these screenings and conventions, and then hanging out with all these bicyclists on a weekly basis, sometimes more than that. So I just became a part of the community, and I went to Martin one day, and I'm like, Martin, I need to get some game. He's like, I got you, man. So for every week for long time, months or years, maybe. I would go out and have these private sessions with Martin, and he's such a solid guy and such a patient teacher that the tricks became secondary. I so enjoyed my one-on-one time with him, and he would sit me aside and kind of do some downloads about where I am and where the industry is and the things he's done. He's just been a great mentor to me in the bicycle world. And now I've got some photos of me surfing or doing some balance tricks, and it's kind of given me a little bit of street cred.
Mm-hmm. Tom and Bill, this is for both of you. Most difficult trick that you're proudest of accomplishing?
Well, I pioneered a trick called the no-footed nut buster when I was in Australia, and they had the brakes opposite, right? They're on different sides of what we're used to. And so there was a big group photo, 100, 150 people. I'm like, I can't miss this. I was going to do a big Brody, or back tire skid, only I hit the wrong brake. And now I'm riding, the post, and it was very uncomfortable. And I it's probably, I think, maybe 300 photos of that exact moment because everybody had their camera out. It's great.
What about you, Tom?
Oh, there was one that I loved back in the day. It was a combo trick, fire hydrant to chicken hook.
What? Oh, I can't even visualize that.
Well, it's tough. It's you spin around and you have the back part of your bike spin around you. You hit the top, the back pegs, and you pull the bike up into your crotch, so it's where you're standing. And the bike you lift one leg and it kind of comes in and then it goes out.
Right.
So you spin around, up, and then back down, and you ride out of it. Martin did the chicken hook. He created the chicken hook. So he could tell you all about it next time you talk to him, Bill. But that was definitely my signature move. And it's funny, back in the 80s, you picked a rider that you liked and you wanted to emulate, and Martin was my guy. So it's awesome that you speak and you hang out with Martin. He's telling you to do, he's giving you advice on how to do tricks and stuff, because his style has not gotten any worse. It's gotten better. The guy is so smooth, and he's such a fantastic rider, and he seems like such an awesome guy to hang out with. So it's fun to see you hanging out with the guys that you did the film with. But I think these guys have kind of turned into more than just casual folks that you hang out with associated with a movie. I think, Bill, have they become more than that? Are they, good friends of yours?
I'm friends with a lot of great athletes, many from the film, many because of the film. And so I'm very fortunate in that way. And you kind of pick up things by osmosis, and it's an ocean of knowledge. So you're never going to learn anything, but I feel like I'm part of the community. And I really try to give back and show up to these shows and be really good to the fans, because they're really good to me. So it's all part of the culture. And if you're in on it and understand it, it's just such a joy to be around. Such a joy, and I'm grateful they'll let me in through the side door.
Because I know Martin does videos almost daily. So it's fun to see you pop in and out of those every once in a while. So fun stuff.
These are my people.
What was it like in, I guess, growing up in Hollywood, Bill? As far as I know, that now with the internet and everything, we're practically inundated with TMZ and all these different shows that have come and gone that follow celebrities around with a microscope, but especially, young celebrities. But at the time, yes, there was still a mystique and a magic around Hollywood, and specifically young actors. But what was it like for young actors then, as compared to now? Or do you even have a comparison?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak of a young actor's experience now. I would imagine it's much the same. The same, I would say, barriers and gatekeepers, the agents, the lawyers, the managers, the studio people. Those people are they're like archetypes, and the names change, but the jobs still remain the same. Of course, now you've got ability to make films and to make sizzle reels or your own statement, put it on YouTube in an infinitely cheaper and more efficient way. This is a game changer, which we had no access to as young performers out here. But the process to learning to be good and to become a good actor or a musician is still the same.
Do you still have an interest in? I know because now you're both an author and you're developing literal bicycles and you're doing all kinds of things. Do you still have a dream part you'd love to play at some point in the future?
I don't think of it in those terms. I
Hmm.
hope relevant as an actor, and I continue to pursue that and to create things that will hopefully fill my bucket. I'm starting to produce now more for
Hmm.
myself and just to keep my hand in the game. So uh, I'm a musician also, and it just I'm into whatever I'm doing at the time. I don't have like a King Lear role that I'm
Hmm.
aiming of. I just like mixing it up with good players and see what comes of that. And something always great comes from that.
Well, that's something I noticed again going back to the book that you have a sort of a sense of adventure in your life where you kind of go where the river takes you, and I really like that because I feel like whether we want to or not, we kind of all do that, and you really seem to embrace it. Um,
Well,
and part of the book that I really like is when you talk about starting the actors studio that you did. I believe it was Adam Rourke. Is that correct?
that's right.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking that's the name. Yeah.
a very famous actor in the '60s. Ended up moving out to Dallas, where I grew up, and started a film actors lab when teaching film acting was not very popular. There weren't a lot of film acting classes, certainly zero in Dallas. So he founded that. Within a month, Lou Diamond Phillips joined the class. My brother Sherman was an instructor there. And we had a really good, solid group of players who learned how to act in front of the camera, which is a different technique than being a stage actor or doing, let's say, commercials or musicals or whatever. It has its own tricks of the trade. And he taught us these things in a very free manner. And we had like Randy Quaid when he still had his wits about him. He was a guest speaker and had some really cool people show up and be a part of what we were doing out there. And then a lot of us migrated to California in the mid '80s, and I ended up doing some more work with the American Film Institute with Adam and Lou Diamond Phillips, and I ended up teaching a film acting class at the American Film Institute. So it had a lasting effect, and for decades I was very much into the teaching and academic side of acting in front of the camera.
Nice.
What is the I guess my follow-up question to that is what is the common challenge that you see with young actors as far as reaching that level of being able to I guess reach that on-camera bar, because on camera you have to be smaller most of the time than you would be on stage. And so what have you seen as the most common threshold that's the hardest for them to jump?
I would think handling success.
Uh-huh.
It's easier to be a struggling artist. You can blame it on everybody else. You can blame your boss, your your parents. Once you're now making millions of dollars, and especially if you're a younger guy or a child, God forbid, and your parents are working for you, and now you're in an adult world and have no sense of self. This is very dangerous territory.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I would have handled it very well had I become as famous as a lot of my friends. I have hard evidence of it that I'm not a complete loser. I could have been sucked easily into a path that would have not been healthful for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who knows what that is? But that's how I kind of frame it in my mind now. I'm much more solid on my own 2 feet, and if I hit the lottery tomorrow or became, the star of some insanely popular series, I'd be more able to handle what is essentially drinking toxic poison.
Uh-huh.
Fame is not a healthful thing. It's not really good for anybody. Once you get your favorite table at a restaurant, then it becomes a very egocentric thing. And fame has its place in the movies in that you're able to get better parts and a higher profile and more money, et cetera, et cetera. But the pitfalls are just enormous. And the best and the brightest get eaten up by it all the time. I was working on a documentary I'm producing, and we were interviewing a studio executive, and he said, I don't know why these young performers, some of them don't want to be movie stars. Well, I just don't understand that. I understand it because it's fraught with pitfalls. Now, to turn down an unoffered Cadillac when nobody's offering you anything, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being an introvert in an extroverted industry, or just the inability to handle the onslaught. And I think the Will Smith thing was a very informative thing for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And this can happen to you too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You said by the way, but keep going, please.
Very good. Well, and kind of like what you're talking about, Bill, I feel like when people get famous, it's almost like not literally, but an inflation, and you get inflated like your ego and everything else, and then you get to the point where you can just pop, like something like what happened with Will Smith, where it's like you become so big that you feel like you can just stretch forever, and then it's like, oh no, you hit critical mass eventually. And I feel like
we've all had bad days on the job. It's just usually not in front of an audience of 1 billion people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, when the whole world is your stage,
What is especially in this book, you are courageously honest. There's nothing, you're not sugarcoating any part of your own experience. And I've also heard that in the last hour, where you really are just telling it like it is and talking about, this is how it was on this part of this film, this is how it was in this part of my life. Where do you come by that honesty and that it's not a humility. I don't mean to say that you're contrite in any way. You're not. You're confident in what you're saying, and you've clearly learned from it. But has that always been the kind of guy you are, or was that a place you came to?
Well, this is a conversation for people who are interested in what I have to say. If I'm in a professional setting,
Mm-hmm.
not like this isn't, but if I'm talking with people who are, I'm interested in financing or whatever, if I've got a different hat on, I'm not going to be as forthright. But I do have my entertainer's hat on. When I listen to an interview, I don't want to hear the same old stuff. Let me hear something different. Come up with the goods, and that's how I felt when I was writing. I gotta give people are going to pay for this. I want to give them what they want. Give the people what they want. And for the second edition, I did have to take a couple of things out that I felt were over the line or hurtful to people that I didn't really need to drag out into the light. There's enough interesting and funny stories that I can concentrate on. And as far as the candid nature of who I am, it comes with age and just not giving a crap about what people are going to be offended by. And in this day and age, people are offended by everything, man. Everything.
Yeah.
So if I offended somebody, I apologize. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Well, and that's something I can attest by reading the book. I mean, it's a very honest account of your your life and your story and everything. And I like that you don't hold back. There's nothing in it, there's nothing in it like horrible or off-putting at all. But there are some moments where it's just like, oh, I believe what he's saying because that is real, And somebody asked a little while ago in one of the highlighted questions if they could get you to autograph the book, and I know I can confirm that is something that you offer on your website.
Yeah, sorry about that. I should have worn my T-shirt with my website on it. It's called myradcareer.com, which is the name of my book, My Rad Career. And I've got some other swag on there. You can check out the bikes if you want to, and it's got some behind-the-scenes stories and photos from the shoot. But I try to keep the fans fed and a dialogue going and the conversation going, and they seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, there's some really great stories in there. I can't recommend the book enough. Even if you've never seen the movie Rad, it is a wonderful behind the scenes look at a lot of interesting things and people.
Brian Dillingham, thank you so much for being here on the stream and listening to our conversation with Bill Allen, star of Rad. Well, I want to let you and Tom sort of ride out the last few minutes that we have here with Bill, and I want to thank Bill again. Thank you for providing us access to you for this 90 minutes. I know you're a very busy man, and this is a treasure for us to be able to do this. But Tom and Matt, obviously, the way you're dressed, you are a qualified Rad fan, and Tom, your literal background is in this. So I'm going to retreat into the background here.
I was going to ask Tom earlier when we were talking about Bill's favorite scene in the movie. As a writer during this time, Tom, what is your favorite scene in the movie Rad?
I think all the race scenes are fantastic. Just how they're blocked and just the speed of the scenes are awesome. There's one particular little bit that I always have to chuckle about when I see it. There's a race. The race kind of goes past this little kid, and I don't know if you have a snippet. You probably don't, but the excitement in his face, and he's just kind of. And I always kind of chuckle when I see that. I don't know if you know that little part, Bill, but I think do you know the one that I'm talking about, Michael?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's the race scenes, of course, are great. I mean, Bill didn't have anything to do with the intro and outro, but those are always fantastic. The music is something I incredibly enjoy. Both songs by Farnham are just amazing. So. Like you said, as far as 80s movies go, I mean, you've got E.T. and you've got that kind of thing, but then you've got Rad, which kind of captures. I grew up in a really small town, so when you think of the town that Rad takes place in, a lot of kids from 1986 can definitely, even if they're in a larger city, they can kind of put themselves into this movie so quickly and so easily because it's just every town USA, which is awesome. And kids were just waiting and pining for something to do back in the 80s. And if you had a bike and you watched Rad, I mean, you were crew, or you wanted to be crew.
Yeah,
that's a great thing. It's just kind of it's kind of a Mayberry kind of feel because you've got the folks that are always out to help the children. So I don't know if I could put a finger on a favorite scene, but it just the feel of the show, just the tone of the movie is just kind of a. It's kind of like Bill said, it's kind of a hero's journey.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a feel-good classic because, I mean, as a kid watching this, the beginning when Crew is doing his parkour while he's on his paper route, when you're a little kid riding a bike, that's what you do. Like you're finding, like little divots and things that, you kind of create your own track. And it was such an identifiable thing. And I love that scene. And then the very ending scene at the credits when I believe it's Eddie and Martin and they're on the bikes and they're upright and they're bouncing and then they reach out and they shake hands.
That's R.L. Osborne and Martin
Yeah.
Aparicio. Yeah.
And they shake hands and it freeze frames there. That'll always be burned into my head. Is like just the coolest. Like I'll never be able to do that stunt, but it was just the coolest kind of an ending handshake in the movie.
Well, I don't know how to end a conversation with Bill Allen. I don't know how to do that. He's come here. He's immediately started a drinking game. He said that he wants to be in a sequel, or he's open to a sequel, I should say. He's making the best BMX bikes presently in the world right now, probably, or some of the best. And he's also writing books. How do you? And he's also said, if you have to, live under a bridge.
Yeah, you said
I said, I don't have a drink. There's one. And he said, if you have to, there's a super chat. He said, if you have to live under a bridge to follow your passion, you do, which is inspiring words because that's what I did. I risked living under a bridge to follow my dream. So how do we walk away from a conversation like this?
I don't know. I mean, Bill, again, we've got a few minutes left, but
I have a soup. Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you just made me think of something and why the connection is so strong for a lot of people. And I was having a conversation with this Mexican guy. He was a super fan, just lovely and so enthusiastic. And he started bagging on Bart Connor. He's like, yeah, man, we found out he was a gymnast. I thought that sucked. I'm like, well, really? What do you think about me? I'm an actor. He's like, man, we were down with Crew. He didn't have a father. He was on food stamps. He was one of us, man. And I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense because most of us were latchkey kids, and a lot of us came from broken homes, and so it really resonated with a lot of kids who were going through a very similar situation, and all they had was their bicycle. That's all they had, and most people had one, at least. Rusting out in the garage, if not in the house. So it not only showed them how to do the tricks, but how to interact with the town, how to be an athlete in a community of athletes. It was just kind of a tell-all or, a primer for what to do with your young life. And a lot of these kids were able to do that, race in their local tracks, get a paper route, get a real bike, and really make things happen in that fashion.
Yeah. Well, and just to expand on what you just said too is the fact that the scene where he helps, like he stops traffic for the lady and he like moves the stanchion, the barricade. That was an impressionable thing because this was the hero of our movie. And even though they were like the older characters that were like, oh, you darn kids, he was friendly and he was helpful and he was respectful of the people in the town. And that plants a seed in, a 9-year-old, 8-year-old brain that, it's not cool to be a jerk, like you need to be a good person to other people. And it's a byproduct of,
it's not about anarchy
character.
or vanquishing your enemy. And I think that when Bart waves me on in Helltrack is one of the great moments in sports films history. It just it brings his character up to a whole new level. It gives Crew the opportunity to compete at a level he is frankly not ready for. He hasn't worked his way up through the ranks. That's a really important. That's why they put these BMXers through 1,000 motos before they get to the upper echelons. It's a rough and tumble sport. You got to know what you're doing out there, and there's no substitute for experience.
Yeah.
Scott Knudsen says, rad is something so valuable that today's multiplexes no longer permit. Neither a CGI blockbuster nor a Downton Abbey sequel. it's something really fun to watch with your friends on a weekend. I miss such movies.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Kind of
I'm going to say it here and now. I know that some people early on in the chat asked if we could see a Maverick sequel type production to Rad. I would almost argue that I would want to see Rad come back in a serialized Cobra Kai format. I would love to see. Yeah, I would love to see Bill star in Rad, the follow-up, as a ongoing series like Cobra Kai.
That would be.
That's
awesome.
what I want to see.
That's what I
That
want to
would
see.
be great.
So.
Oh man. Well, Bill, thank you so much. Everybody in the chat has been just thrilled to see you here. There's people just freaking out. They love you. We love you, and we love the film you made, and we love the things you're still doing. The book is great. Thanks for still just being willing to be part of all of our lives. We can't thank you enough. We really appreciate it.
Oh, guys, you're killing me. That's awesome. Really.
Well, Matt, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
You know what I mean.
Oh yeah. You know.
I ran out of drink.
But I just want to remind everybody, you know, as soon as this stream is over, go to myradcareer.com, buy this book. I promise you, I give you my personal guarantee, you will not be sorry. It is a fantastic read. It's an easy read. It's basically like you're sitting down having a conversation with Bill, much like we are now. It's the exact same tone, and it's fantastic. So can't recommend it highly enough.
All right. Well, everybody, please show your love for Bill Allen out there in the chat, and we will see you on the next stream, which is going to be, or the next video coming up, which is not in my notes. What's the next? Oh, that's right. It's Analog Toys. So go to Analog Toys in, was it 30 minutes at 5 o'clock? Or no, 4:45. 4:45 our time. It'll be on the schedule on Iconicon in your time zone to see the Analog Toys Desert Rat premiere video follow-up. So we will see you over there. Thanks again to everyone in the chat. Thank you, Bill, for being here. It's been an unforgettable 90 minutes for me. And I can check a box in my bucket list.
Yep.
I've been able to talk to Bill Allen. And everybody, we will see you on the next video. So have a good Iconicon, and we will see you all later.